Now, when Nike releases a new generation of Mercurial, the expectation at this point is that everything will be brand new, or at least different than what it was before. What you don't expect is to see the return of a technology that was last seen 7 years ago, but that is effectively what Nike have given us with this variant of the Mercurial. I have here the Mercurial Vapor 14 Elite with the AG stud pattern, and for those of you that are up on your Mercurial history, you might recognize this stud pattern from 7 years ago because it was last seen on the Vapor 10 and Superfly 4. And in fairness to Nike, it's not exactly the same. The sole plate has been completely redesigned and the stud pattern is slightly modified as well. I'm not even complaining about them bringing this back. I just think it's a little bit surprising. But as a true AG stud pattern, something that is specifically designed for use on artificial grass and nothing else, I actually think that this is a huge improvement over the AG Pro stud patterns that they've been offering for the last several years. I'm going to talk about why that is in today's video and really just go over all the details of what makes the AG version of the Vapor different than the FG version, which of course will be the most popular. So if you want to learn more about these, including how they fit and feel on feet, please stick around and watch the entire review. And if you are by chance interested in a pair for yourself, unfortunately availability in the US still sucks. Nike, if you're watching, please make AG stud patterns more readily available in the US. I'm not sure why that's the case. Nonetheless, if you are still interested in a pair through Europe, you can of course click the first link down below in the description or the little pop-up in the corner of the screen. That's going to take you to the review page on my website where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal retail price. Also, if you guys do end up enjoying the video and perhaps want to see more reviews of other non-FG stud patterns on the channel, don't forget to support this one with a like and let me know specifically what you'd like to see down below in the comments. Also, I've noticed that a lot of you guys who watch these videos aren't actually subscribed to the channel. If that's you, it would mean a lot to me if you could hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. So let's start with the stud pattern. Take a look at this, the AG stud pattern option on the Mercurial Vapor 10. And now take a look at this, the new AG stud pattern on offer on both the Vapor 14, like I have here, as well as the Superfly 8. Nothing changes regardless of which model you go for. There's basically two main differences when you're talking about the stud pattern specifically, and that is losing a stud right around this general area and then losing one support stud in the middle. They've just gone for one as opposed to two. Everything else about this stud pattern is basically a copy and paste of what we saw from 7 years ago. And I'm gonna get into what I think is good and bad about this stud pattern in just a second, but I do wanna share a little bit of commentary in terms of whether or not this was the right move by Nike, because on one hand, I really like seeing this stud pattern come back. I think that as a purpose-built true AG stud pattern, this is actually much better than the AG Pro stud patterns that they've been offering over the last couple of years, which I think were more trending towards FG AG rather than true AG. We even saw players like Neymar choosing to wear the AG stud pattern rather than the FG one for use on natural grass, and you could definitely get away with it. It was more or less kind of just a conical FG stud pattern with some AG specific attributes. Where I think there's a bit of a problem here is that this is very contradictory by Nike, because I think especially with the Mercurial line that really represents the latest and greatest in football boot technology, when a new model comes out with all this new tech, they're always preaching about how this is better than what they were doing before. So how on earth do they end up simply recycling a stud pattern from 7 years ago and now calling it better than what they had before? If it was better than what they had before, then why'd they change it in the first place? All this to say, and this is something I've been preaching on this channel for years, is that the marketing material, especially when a new boot comes out, needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Because while a brand like Nike would love you as a consumer to believe that their latest products are better than all of their past ones, sometimes change does happen for the sake of change. So starting with the base of the AG variant of the Mercurial, it still features an anatomic sole plate, which basically means that the sole plate isn't perfectly flat. Unlike this tabletop and my hand, if you imagine that as a sole plate and a foot, when I push from side to side, if the surface is flat, there's that potential for slippage. But if my hand sunk into the table ever so slightly, which is basically these slight, I guess, indentation or anatomic shape you have to this one, you get a much more connected sensation and your foot doesn't move around from side to side. It's a very subtle thing, but it makes a pretty big difference in terms of the overall responsive feel on offer. It also has a similar amount of spring back, although in general, I would say this sole plate does seem to be more flexible than what you're gonna find on the FG variant. Not a huge deal though. The stud plate, of course, sits on top. That's what, of course, holds the studs, and it's the part you see here in gray with the little green accents. You have one in the forefoot and one in the heel, with, of course, new for this generation of Mercurial, kind of this spine stiffener bar connecting the two through the midfoot. I would argue that the plastic is a little bit thicker, especially through the forefoot, which is there to better deal with heat that you're going to have on an artificial grass surface, especially outdoors in the summertime. It's just there for the sake of durability. They have surprisingly not added any kind of extension around the toe box and forefoot for the sake of durability with the bond between the sole plate and the upper, but I guess that's the choice that they felt wasn't necessary. And you'll also notice that these little indentations right here on either side of the forefoot are not as deep as what you'll find on the FG version. Again, I'm going to assume that's there for the sake of durability. The actual AG stud pattern, however, is the biggest variant you're going to find from the FG model, where of course there are no bladed chevron studs to be found anywhere on the bottom of your foot. Instead, you're gonna find these conical studs that are hollowed out through the middle that vary in height quite significantly and overall are just a lot shorter than what you're gonna find on a traditional FG stud pattern, especially when compared to the FG version of the Mercurial. And really the name of the game with this stud pattern is just the right amount of traction on artificial grass without being too grippy. That is the formula for a really good AG stud pattern, and that's where I think this stud pattern is much better for use on specifically artificial grass versus the AG Pro stud pattern that we've got with the last several generations of Mercurial. The studs themselves, instead of being made out of a hard plastic, are made out of kind of like a really hard rubber material, but still softer than a traditional stud, so they have a little bit of flex to them and also provide a little bit of cushion, which of course on artificial grass, it's a shallower playing surface. That little bit of cushion is not going to be immediately noticeable, but long term, if you were running in these versus the FG pair, this is going to be a lot more comfortable, and the risk of stud pressure is pretty much non-existent if you're using these on artificial grass, which of course that can be an issue with longer FG studs on the same type of playing surface. Now, the reason why these are hollowed out through the middle is to give those tips that ability to flex ever so slightly, and that little bit of flex is effectively a break in the grip. So when you're pushing off really hard, obviously you want your studs to dig into the playing surface, but you don't want them to get stuck or cling, if you will. If it gets stuck and you try to pivot and twist or something like that, it really does put your knees especially at a very high risk of injury. Not to say that you're guaranteed to get injured wearing FG stud patterns on artificial grass. A lot of people do it all the time, but from a safety perspective and really just reducing your overall potential for injury, this is so much safer for use on artificial grass than the FG stud pattern would be. To make a long story short, artificial grass clings to just about any type of stud pattern. It's a matter of having the right balance of grip versus that ability to twist and pivot. This pretty much gives you that perfect balance. So definitely isn't gonna feel as aggressive as an FG stud pattern will on an AG field, but that's actually for the better for the sake of your own safety. And in terms of overall performance, the traction provided by this stud pattern is still fantastic. Again, for use on artificial grass, this to me is the best stud pattern you can buy. And then there's the weight, which of course is slightly different because of the sole plate and stud pattern. In a size 9.5 US, the AG variant of the Vapor 14 Elite weighs in at 7.45 ounces, the equivalent of 211 grams, which is legitimately a 5-gram difference in comparison to the FG version in the same size. Basically an amount of weight that you are not going to notice. If you are regularly playing on artificial grass, you would be much better off with this stud pattern and the extra 5 grams. Other than those differences, everything else about the AG Vapor 14 Elite is identical to that of the FG model. So instead of me going over all of the little technicalities of the upper, of which there are many for this generation of Mercurial, I'm gonna skip to the on-feet portion of the video, but if you do wanna learn more about what the new generation of Mercurials has on offer and all the tech behind it, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen to my extremely detailed review that'll give you all that information. On feet feet, the AG version of the Mercurials feel pretty well the same as the FG version in that you still get the same anatomic sole plate and the overall shape of the boot doesn't change whatsoever because it's using the exact same sole plate. I also have these paired up with some Pure Grip socks, which for those that don't know is my own brand of grip socks. They have grips along the bottom as well as the heel to prevent your foot from sliding around, help hold the socks in place, and in turn improve the overall comfort of your boots. They're also available at a very affordable price of just $14.99 in a wide variety of different colors. If you're interested in trying some out for yourself, the website to go to is www.puregripsocks.com, which of course will be linked down below. So other than the stud pattern, which of course if you're on a shallower AG surface, even the really nice ones, they're still not as deep as natural grass. This is just going to feel much more comfortable long term, as well as in terms of just not having any kind of stud pressure at all. The studs are the perfect length for use on artificial grass. As far as width is concerned, they are tight-fitting Mercurial, so if you have super wide feet, probably not a great option for you, but if you've worn Mercurials in the last several years, you kind of know what to expect. Really not that different from the previous generation Vapor 13 either, so they'll fit most people as long as you like a super tight fit. And then as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you're looking to order some for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, even though it is extremely contradictory for Nike to recycle a technology from 7 years ago in a market where they've always been preaching the latest and greatest technology being better than what they were making before, I think this was actually the right move by them, and in terms of being a true AG stud pattern, I much prefer this over what they were doing with the AG Pro variants. It definitely loses out on the FG AG duality of that AG Pro stud pattern, but for me, if I'm buying an AG pair of football boots, I want them to be the best they can be on the surface that they were designed for, and I feel like this stud pattern is much better in that regard. And then of course the new generation of Mercurial as a whole, I think it's technically very impressive, trending a little bit back towards the Tajin synthetic days of the Mercs, but still incorporating a lot of the comfort elements that we've come to expect from the Mercurial series with the introduction of course, Flyknit uppers. Overall, it's a really solid pair of football boots, and for use on artificial grass, if you're after really the best of the best in the speed boot category, you're not going to be unhappy with these. Anyways guys, that's it for my review. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. Again, if you're interested in a pair of AG Mercurials for yourself, either the Vapor or the Superfly, first link down below, go ahead and check it out. That'll take you to the review page on my website where you'll find buy it now links to pick these up below their normal retail price. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask them down below in the comment section, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.